Good evening. Tonight is the Brain Injury Association Waterloo-Wellington Survivor Story, and tonight we have Ashley Tindall, and I'm going to let Ashley talk about her experience. For those of you that are on the call, if you want to send me your questions, I can present them to Ashley during the call, and then we'll have an opportunity at the end to ask our questions directly. So over to you, Ashley.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As Linda said, my name is Ashley Tindall. I'm just going to be sharing a bit about my journey with you tonight. I've titled my presentation, The Way I See Things. And the picture you see on the screen right now is actually my glasses. And so the unique part that you see about them is called a prism. And that helps me see things that are out of my field of vision. I'll go into more detail about my vision later on. August 14th, 2000. That is a day I will never forget. That is a day that has shaped who I am today. That's when I was in a motor vehicle collision. As a result of the accident, I now have brain injury. I have a cerebral spinal fluid leak, or CSF leak, which has required many surgeries to repair. The CSF surrounds your brain. It's a protective thing. And because of the accident, I had so many dozen broken bones in my head that there was a way for that CSF out. It came out my nose. It looked just like water. Well, the problem was, if there was a way for it out, there was a way for bacteria in, which is what puts me at risk for meningitis, which I have unfortunately had twice. I have low vision. My right eye is completely blind, and I have no peripheral vision in my left eye. So if you picture the world in front of me as a clock, I can see from about 12 till 2. So about 25% of what everyone else sees. I have a condition called diabetes insipidus. It's an issue with my fluid balance because of an injury to my pituitary. Your pituitary sends a hormone to your kidneys, telling your body how much fluid to keep and how much to release. Because my pituitary was injured, it doesn't do that. So if I didn't take my medication, I wouldn't retain any fluid. I'd be going to the washroom all the time. I would get very dehydrated. So I'm very thankful for the meds that I have to treat that condition. I also shattered my right elbow, and I have no sense of smell. That is a list of my injuries. What's more important is how those injuries have impacted my day-to-day life and the strategies I use to overcome the challenges they create. One of the first big challenges I faced after the accident was going back to high school. I'll get into that in a little bit. First, I want to share about the injuries, which I just outlined for you. Whoops. And how those injuries have impacted my life and the strategies I have to overcome those challenges. So the column on the left outlines the injuries that I just reviewed with you. The middle column shows how that injury impacts my life. And the strategies I have are on the right-hand side. So for example, with brain injury, I have fatigue as a result of that. It takes me longer to do things, and things require more energy. I also have verbosity. What that means basically is that I talk a lot. Before the accident, I was very shy. And now, because of where my brain was injured, I talk a lot more, I'm more outgoing, and I've had that change in my personality. So some of the strategies I have to deal with the fatigue, I have naps. I do things in the morning when possible, and I adjust my expectations to remember that things will take me longer and will require more energy and might need to be done in a different way. With regards to the verbosity, I use tools, for example, the slideshow, to help keep me on track. For the cerebral spinal fluid leak, every time I have a cold, it instills fear. Do I just have a runny nose, or is that CSF leaking? The questions ensue. So I have learned that when I have a cold or when I get sick, I often need to stand down from social engagements to give my body the time and space it needs to heal. It's not fun and I didn't enjoy it. I still don't enjoy stepping down from things when I need to, but I recognize the importance and the impact on my health. With regards to my low vision, because of my low vision, I can't have my driver's license. My low vision also contributes to my fatigue and creates social anxiety. So I have learned to take public transit. I get a ride with friends and family whenever needed. And I tell people about my vision so that they understand. For example, if I walked past them and didn't say hi, It wasn't that I was being rude, I just didn't see them. And I try my best to be willing to accept accommodations to help accommodate with my low vision. The diabetes insipidus, which is the fluid imbalance. When I'm out and about, I often need to know where there is a washroom in case my medications wear off. I can, to a certain extent, adjust my schedule and meds accordingly. Don't worry, I have doctor permission to do that. I shattered my right elbow, so I can't straighten my right arm all the way, and it's not as strong as it was before the accident. So I've adjusted to using my left arm for certain things. With regards to no sense of smell, there are safety concerns about that. For example, one time I was at my parents' and I offered to make breakfast for Mom and I. She carried on getting ready for the day as I went about making the omelet. And a few minutes later, Mom came into the kitchen and said, "Ashley, you need to turn that gas stove off and open all the windows." I didn't have the burner lit properly and I was pouring gas into the house. But without a sense of smell, I had no way of knowing that. So I know, as a safety concern, do my best to never have a gas stove wherever I live. Another concern is that I can't smell if food has gone bad. That's often a way that you can know if something has gone bad. So I ask for help and I'm aware of my limitations. After an accident, it often feels like you have to put the pieces of life back together. And things that were a part of your life that seemed natural or easy have likely become a challenge. One of the first main challenges I faced, as I mentioned, was going back to high school. Accommodations were provided, but I wholeheartedly resisted. To accept accommodations meant that I had to admit I couldn't do things the same as before the accident. Going back to high school was one of the first things that I did that was something I did from before the accident that used to come easy. Sure, I tried at school, but I didn't have to work too hard. I was able to get good grades. And now it took so much effort. I needed accommodations, and it felt like a struggle. I also desperately wanted to fit in. I missed a year of school because of the accident, and so all my friends had graduated. They had moved on and they weren't even at the school anymore. So I was left in a cohort with, sure, they were acquaintances, but I didn't have any close friends, and I just wanted to fit in. Having a large print textbook the size of my desk didn't make me feel like I fit in. Leaving class early so I could navigate the hallways before they got too chaotic didn't make me feel like I fit in. So I resisted. How did I move forward? I took a reduced course load. I only had classes in the morning because of my fatigue. I wrote my exams in a different room, so I had extra time. And I had an individual education plan, or an IEP, and an identification, placement, and review committee to make sure I had the support I needed. Those were basically documents that were set in place to help the school know how to support me. Although I resisted a lot of accommodations, I was willing to accept enough support and extra help that I was able to succeed. During my time at high school, I tried to greet each day with a smile. There's a difference between waking up and saying, "Good morning, God," and "Good God, morning." Sometimes the only thing we have control of is our attitude. A quote that I enjoy from Henry Ford says, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." But be aware that not everything will go as you planned, and you will have setbacks. Another quote I enjoy is that life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. So I'd graduated high school. Now what? I knew I would always regret it if I didn't at least try college or university. My grades weren't as high as before the accident, and I was now in the double cohort. So the double cohort was when they were getting rid of OAC, or grade 13. That meant that 2 years were graduating at the same time, which resulted in twice as much competition for college and university, which wasn't in my favor. But I was accepted at the University of Guelph. That meant I had to move to the city and away from home. I was a country bumpkin, and I was used to having the support of Mom and Dad right there with me. I would also have to get used to a new and busy environment with my low vision. I had social interactions were awkward at times. For example, when I met someone, this is what I would see, when in reality, they were trying to shake my hand, and I couldn't see their hand because of my low vision. So to avoid awkward situations like that, I learned that in certain circumstances, to do a visual scan and move my head around so that I could see everything in my environment. I tried my best to be proactive, not reactive. I set myself up for success instead of preparing myself for failure. Before my time at university, I went with my therapists to help me learn how to take the city buses. I only went to school part-time. I took naps to accommodate my fatigue. I was registered with the Center for Students with Disabilities on campus. And by the point I was at university, I was more willing to accept accommodations. I had preferred seating. I had a note taker because I found it very challenging to listen to the prof, look at the presentation slides, and take notes at the same time. So I was provided with a note taker to reduce that stress. For my exams, I had visual help with the Scantron cards. The Scantron cards are for multiple choice, and they're just a nightmare for my vision. I didn't want to do poorly on an exam because I didn't properly line up my numbers or my the bubbles for which answer it was. I had use of a computer. I only wrote my exams in the morning because of my fatigue. I wrote my tests in the CSD office and had extra time. One of the reasons I wrote my tests in the CSD office was because of my low vision. I can't see somebody coming up beside me, so I have to hear them coming. Because of that, I pay a lot more attention to what I'm hearing and am aware of most sounds in the room. You can imagine how distracting that would be when trying to write a test and being aware of every pin drop in the room. So it was helpful for me to be able to write in a quiet room by myself. This is just a cute little cartoon that I found about being proactive instead of reactive and initiative. Learning, strategies, and successes. I tried to find a strategy or support to help overcome all the challenges I was faced with. I tried not to look at the big picture and compartmentalize, and learn to live one day at a time. The trick I mean by compartmentalizing is, let's say, for example, when I was at the hospital, maybe I was dealing with my vision loss, but all of a sudden I needed to have a surgery. I couldn't handle all of that emotionally at once. So I had to put my vision loss on the back burner and focus on what was paramount in the moment. After that surgery and recovery had happened, then I was able to go back and focus on emotionally dealing with my vision loss again. But I was able to focus only on what was paramount at the moment and most important to the circumstances. I learned to count all successes, no matter how small. Sometimes it's easy to shrug off certain successes, saying, oh, it was just little, it was nothing much. Well, do you know what? A success is a success. And if you have a bunch of small successes, that really adds up. And it helps you to focus on the positive instead of any setbacks or failures you might be feeling. My time at university, I learned so much more than what I was taught in the classroom. I learned about myself and formed a new identity. At university, it was up to me who I told about my brain injury and low vision. That's one of the things about brain injury. It's an invisible condition. And so it's often up to the individual who has the brain injury to let their friends, family, and peers know about what their challenges are. I reminded myself that different doesn't have to be better or worse. Different can just be different. My new friends were not comparing the old Ashley to the new Ashley. They didn't know the old Ashley from before the accident, so there was no way they could compare. They only knew me for who I was that day, and I found a lot of beauty in that and helped me not to compare my abilities now compared to what I could do before the accident. So this is an example of if I was comparing the before the accident Ashley and after the accident Ashley. Before the accident, I was on the honor roll. I still do well enough at school, but had to try a lot harder. I was very athletic and found my identity in that. I can't play competitive sports anymore, so I had a feeling of lost identity. I used to socially fit in, and now, with an invisible disability, and accommodations that make me feel like I stand out, it's harder to fit in socially, or it feels that way anyways. I used to have my driver's license, and I can't now because of my low vision. So you can see how comparing can often end up with a negative feeling. But you can have a positive outlook. The far left columns are the two that I just reviewed with you. But even so, I can still learn. I just have to be willing to put in extra effort and accept accommodations. Now, instead of finding my identity in being an athlete, I find my identity in God, which can never be taken from me. I recognize that standing out doesn't have to be bad or negative. And I can take public transit and have lots of friends and family willing to give me a ride. My identity. Even with keeping a positive outlook, I was a different person. I am a different person than before the accident. I could no longer play competitive sports. Everything seemed to take more organizing, effort, and energy. I had lost some independence because of no license, and I needed so much extra support. I began feeling left behind, which became a theme in my life. It started right after the accident. My friends had graduated and moved on, and I was left behind. At university, I went part-time, so friends that I made in my classes moved on to different courses, and I was left behind. After university, friends got married and had kids, and I felt stuck in a rut. I feel that this will continue to be a theme throughout my life, and I just need to be careful to have the extra support I need during these times. Finding a new identity took time. I began to accept that just because I have to do something differently doesn't mean I can't do it. I tried to focus on what I could still do rather than what I couldn't do. I got involved in the community, which gave me purpose and increased my self-confidence. I joined a group on campus called the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, or IVCF for short. This group, someone asked me if I wanted to help plan the food for the fall retreat. Sure. Next thing I knew, I had asked to be the retreat coordinator. Then, before I knew it, I was on the leadership planning team. And then I was the president of the planning team. If they had confidence in me, why shouldn't I have confidence in myself, I suppose? Throughout your rehab and recovery, family and friends might be a big support and offer help. They might want to help, but not know how. They might insist on helping, but not know the best way. Or they might not understand ABI, acquired brain injury, so may seem either distant or judgmental. You need to remember that accepting help does not identify weakness. It means you need to recognize you can't do things the same as before your brain injury. And sometimes maybe you can't do that activity anymore, but other times you just need to do it in a different way. For example, returning to high school. I could still do it, but it looked different for me. And I can only imagine the frustrations for my parents, me not accepting those accommodations. All they wanted was for me to succeed and have the support I needed. Accepting help shows you want to succeed, but you just need extra support. Advocating is crucial. As I mentioned, brain injury is an invisible condition. Here's a picture of me not being able to straighten my right arm. Here's a picture of me suffering from fatigue. Here's a picture of me with brain injury. Here's a picture of me being verbose. I know, it just looks like I'm interacting with the world the same as anyone else would. And that's often how it appears, which is why it is so crucial for either yourself as a survivor, family, friends, or therapists to advocate for what help you need and ways that accommodations can assist you. With an invisible condition, it's often up to advocating to get the support that's needed. And you need to remember, when putting the puzzle of life back together, it is going to look different than before your brain injury. Some days it might feel like all the pieces are falling apart. Some days you might have help, and some days you might need help. Try to look forward and keep putting one foot in front of the other. The way I see things. There's a reason I titled my presentation that. My mom and I have been writing a book, It shares the perspective of both the survivor and caregiver. Our goal is to provide others with hope and to show that you can get through trauma and still have a smile on your face. That's my mom and I. The end.
Wow. So I have not received any questions. The chat line is open if anyone wants to send me a question. I think for me, Ashley, you talked about all your challenges and ways that you coped, but there must have been a time when you thought, this isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you get through that?
An example of that would be, so yes, I did graduate university, but it took me 10 years. And by the last few years, I didn't feel like I was a student anymore. I didn't identify with that anymore. I was ready to move on. And so I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to give up. I let myself move on in a different way. And so that's when I moved out of the home that I was in, found a new place to live, got independence in that way, and figured out that I just needed a change. I needed to feel like I wasn't stuck and I was able to move forward and make progress. So I think what I would say is when I had times where I felt like I wasn't succeeding or I was getting frustrated, I would try and recognize what was the emotion behind that and see if I could address that in another way.
Okay. What types of rehabilitation did you receive and which ones did you find the most helpful?
I received, now you're testing my memory, speech language pathology, occupational therapy, recreation therapy, rehab therapy, physiotherapy. My mom's on this call as well. You can step in if I've forgotten anything, Mom. And it was like a full-time job, all of those therapists that I had and going to those appointments.
And which did you find the most helpful?
Most helpful, I would say one of them was the speech language pathology, because it was something with, for example, the verbosity that I was experiencing. It impacted my interactions with anyone I knew. And so I had to learn strategies and social cues of how to be involved in conversations and be a respectful social partner. And so I found that applicable not only in social interactions, but actually in my writing too. Like when I was doing English through high school and stuff like that, my verbosity would happen in that as well. And there was often a page limit to your assignment. And so I found the speech therapy helped in that as well.
Okay.
And another one that I really enjoyed was recreational therapy. My recreational therapist helped to find other sports and activities I could still take part in, aside from the fact that I couldn't do sports anymore, and soccer in particular was my life. Okay. So I found, though I don't necessarily actively keep up with any of those activities anymore, I found it was a good experience to just figure out what was it that I liked about soccer. You know, of course it was playing the sport, but it was also the social aspect. And so I think that's where joining the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship kind of helped fill that that social piece for me.
Okay. How long would you say your recovery took? So how long after your accident did you feel like you were yourself again, or your new self again?
Yeah, that is a great question. I would say onwards of 10 years before, because I had different transitions throughout that with going to high school, and then I was really able to form my new identity during my time at university. And so I was thankful for that, but I would say it was onwards of 10 years.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, there's Brenda. We can see her in the in the mirror. Come on into the screen here, Brenda.
Okay.
There she is. Yeah, there's Mom. So anything you want to add here before I'm going to take us off recording here? Anything you want to add?
No.
Okay, she's an interesting girl, isn't she?
Yes, she is. We're pretty proud of her.
I know you are. Okay, I'm going to take us off recording. Thank you very much, Ashley. Hang in there. We'll chat in a minute.